This is The KJ Show. The KJ Show with host Dr. Katherine Johnson is a mix of breaking news and practical advice on the many ways in which the energy industry can affect you and your family. Katherine will combine energy updates and conversations with leaders in the energy efficiency community. So please welcome your host, Dr. KJ.
Hello, and welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. Sorry I've been away, but I am going to bring you back sizzling tidbits from my experiences out west in Colorado, which is why today's show is named, the episode is Wacky Mountain High, because I was at a conference with evaluators like me, and I can't believe some of the stuff these guys are getting away with in the name of evaluation. But I always like to start with things that you just cannot make up. And it's getting wackier every day. So apparently there's a study that never really got to the mainstream. Gee, I wonder why. There was a study that was determined originally in 2016 by the Argonne National Labs. And then they also did it again in 2023, another study. And guess what they found? Solar farms kill as many birds as wind turbines. And a lot of these birds, this is a good example, they get basically electrocuted during their migratory patterns. They said that, once, and also because they put up solar panels made from China, they're also blocking the sunlight, actually, obviously, and creating changes in the habitat and the diet of the birds that were, migrating in these past for decades. And all of a sudden, the insects that used to be there aren't there anymore because the solar farms killed them. So it's becoming a real problem. And this is something that's been happening for about 10 years. And no one talks about this. It's always amazing to me that no one talks about the damage that these, quote, renewable energy technologies cause. I've been talking about wind turbines, and everybody knows they upset whale patterns, and people can see that wind turbines would obviously kill birds. But apparently solar farms kill too. A recent work by a scientist named Hannah van der Zanden found that the birds killed at solar farms were non-local, with peak kills during migratory periods in April and September, and that they also noted that the U.S. Association of Avian Veterinarians, I had no idea they were bird vets, but makes sense, published a conservation note, said solar energy production's toll on wild birds, and they estimated from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that yearly avian mortalities due to electrocution average 5.6 million up to, and then some up to 8 to 50 million during following collisions with electrical lines. So they get electrocuted, and they get and they can't land, and it's just awful. And I'm wondering, my friends who are in the solar industry talk about how wonderful it is, even though I've talked about this on my previous show quite a lot about how dangerous solar panels are to the materials that destroy, the rare earth materials that use child labor. Well, this is even worse because now we're killing birds. They said that construction can lead to habitat destruction, and they basically said that the figures are, even though these figures, some of them are a decade old, they basically say that as U.S. generation reliance on solar power increases, so will the mortality rates of birds. Bird lovers, Audubon America, where are you protesting solar farms? Unfortunately, you're not. You should be. And then the other thing that was really, to me, too funny to make up, I can't even fathom this, but you want to put up the next graphic because it's so goofy. Okay, this, I swear to God, was true. It was not some meme. But apparently Pope Leo the 14th, I guess, I'm pretty good with Roman numerals, the first American Pope blesses a block of ice in name of climate justice. In name of climate justice. They are basically saying that this Pope is continuing what Francis did in his encyclical called Laudato Si, which calls on Catholics to care for the environment and address climate change. Now, I'm all for having care for the environment. In fact, that was the first commandment God gave Adam, is to take the earth and supply and subdue it and take care of it. And I'm a huge proponent of stewardship of the earth and making sure that we don't pollute it and we don't do all the bad things that used to happen. I'm all about preserving the earth. But climate change is a whole other thing. First of all, as I have said on this show and in other shows repeatedly, climate change is not true. It is not happening. It does not exist. It is malicious science looking for a way to control us. And I know I sound like a conspiracy theorist. I promise you I'm not. But I've done a lot of reading and a lot of study on this. And people say I'm a climate denier. No, I'm not. I think climate happens. The thing is, you can't look at it in 10-year intervals and think, oh, the world is changing, because the world is millions and millions of years old. So apparently Pope Leo decided that he wanted to bless a block of ice at a climate change event as part of his ongoing efforts to highlight environmental concerns and criticize those who ridicule those who speak of global warming. In other words, they ridicule me because I'm not in favor of global warming, but they don't really understand that it used to be global cooling and then it was global warming and now it's just climate change. And the actual facts are carbon is a naturally occurring substance in the environment. And if you don't have carbon, you don't have human life. And trees and oceans are no longer, I've never been built into the climate models that everybody sees. There's no such thing as that infamous duck curve. A lot of the data that the UN said was proving climate change was manipulated, taken out of context, and basically falsified. So it's a myth. And I wish that people wouldn't think it was, but when it becomes really bad, because climate change also is a part of this pagan society belief, that, basically during the ceremony, Leo placed his hand on the block of ice and blessed it, the water dripping from it, saying, Lord of life, bless this water. It may waken our hearts and cleanse our indifference, soothe our grief, and renew our hope through Christ our Lord. That's a nice prayer, but it has nothing to do with climate change. And the reactions from the conservative Catholics are astounding. They're really mad. They're saying that, it was the one man, Matt Walsh, said the spectacle was horrific and questioning why the leader of the Catholic Church shouldn't be anywhere near this nonsense. His characterization is a weird pagan worshiping earth hippie ritual, which climate change has a lot of those. And he also uses the platform to push for stronger government action expressed in the hope the UN climate conferences. Except the UN climate conferences are also completely false. They had their climate conferences held in fossil producing countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE, and climate change is, and they don't even make the UAE say, well, fossil fuels are bad. Well, then why are you hosting a climate change conference in UAE? Or why are you hosting a venue in the Amazon for a climate change conference that requires destroying the Amazon forest? So to me, climate change is a political tool. It's not a scientific fact. And the fact that the Pope has been ensnared by blessing a block of ice just goes to show how wacky things are. And I'll have even more wacky stuff when we're back. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson. You're watching The KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back with more wacky stuff. Stay tuned.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, or Dr. KJ, as my friends call me. And today I want to talk about some of the takeaways that I learned when I was in my evaluation conference in Denver about 2 weeks ago. Now, the energy evaluators are a unique niche industry. We are basically the folks that use economics and statistics and science and a little marketing and operations. It's a very broad stroke. But what we try to do is figure out if the energy efficiency conservation programs or demand response programs are working the way they're supposed to, because often these are required by public service commissions. And a lot of good utilities just want to offer energy efficiency and conservation because it's the right thing to do. And I'm a big proponent of this. So evaluators, in my world, there's about 100 of them, or no, 800 of them or so. We all congregated in Denver to talk about the newest advances in energy efficiency evaluation methodologies and share findings from interesting studies and sort of chat about, the world as they see it. Now, this is basically a conference filled with people who buy into all the stuff that I kind of rail against, like climate change and net zero and how EVs are great and solar is great and fossil fuels are bad. And so I'm kind of the iconoclast of the industry, but my clients like it because my clients are utilities and public service commissions, and they appreciate the common sense approach I take to analysis. So the first session I went to was not even a real paper based on a real study. It was a hypothetical paper put together by one of the conference sponsors. So they got all these free slots, and he basically was understanding how in the world, what would happen if can California meet their bold electrification goals using innovative rate design? And so I thought, okay, we'll see. So this is where we go. So basically, they found out that California has these they call them big, hairy, or bold, audacious goals or whatever, that they want to achieve 100% renewable energy and zero carbon electricity by 2045. The short answer is, it ain't going to happen. To achieve this, they basically think that every single Californian needs to participate in this transition. We can't even get every single person in America to vote. How are we going to get them to force them to change their lifestyle and switch from natural gas to electrification, even though we don't have the grid to support it? That's another issue. But the transition is threatened because guess what? Electric rates in California are really, really high. And why in the right mind would poor people want to switch to a higher cost electricity as opposed to fossil fuels? And oh, by the way, renewables aren't much cheaper either. So this modeling exercise that this company did wanted to see if they could combine all the different technologies, battery storage, electrification, all these different ways. And they basically wanted to see if it was achievable. And rates have a higher differential between on-peak and off-peak. That makes basically, if you start charging people time of use, meaning if you're using at peak time, you're going to pay more for your electric kilowatt hour than if you use it in the middle of the night. It's the same thing that they use on toll roads. And it works to some degree. But not everybody can alter their usage patterns, especially certain companies. But demand response has been a way that's to sort of be able to shift the load. Well, the other problem is that they wanted to see if all these different tools that they're trying to use, electrification, time of use rates, promoting electrification. They wanted to install 6 million heat pumps by 2030. So far, they got 9 million, 1.9 million. And they also think that their heat pump partnership isn't really working either. So all the solutions they're coming up with don't make sense. But let's cut to the chase. So this model, I'm not going to get into all the variations on theme. It's kind of complicated, but just go to the next slide. So this model basically tried to model the inputs based on if you did a deep dual fuel retrofit. That's code word for switching you from gas to electricity, or if you installed gas water heaters retrofit, or if you did a heat pump installation, or if you did a heat pump water heater. Well, the problem is, if you do some of these combinations, guess what? your savings actually go down, not up, which is in energy efficiency. The whole notion of wanting to do it is to save energy, right? Well, in this scenario, no matter how much they tried to twist the data, they still couldn't figure out a way to make certain scenarios cost effective. Well, if they're not profitable or cost effective for the customers, they're not going to do them. And already California can't meet its goal voluntarily. So what's going to happen? So this particular figure represents how the first year total bill impacts for electric and gas homes with solar customers, both pre and post. They have all these things, but basically they're seen with the electric bill. If you have solar PV and all these other things, are going to go up or down. And guess what? The electric bill sometimes goes down, which is bad. And in this case, it says the bill reductions are the largest in certain parts of PG&E and SoCalGas's territory because they have a high heating load. But also they show that the heat pump water heaters are estimated to lead to a small reduction in bills. And the heat pumps in general are estimated to increase bills for customers in certain climate zones in the utility area. So installing heat pump will actually increase your bills. Why in the world would people do this? I'm a big fan of heat pumps, if it makes sense. This doesn't make sense. These simulations also showed that increased bills are in the climate zones with the highest HVAC needs. So we're taking air conditioners away from people that are working and putting in heat pumps that don't work as well, I hate to say it, and forcing them to increase their electric usage. Now, I'm a big fan of heat pumps. I've been promoting geothermal heat pumps for most of my career. Geothermal heat pumps are a different animal entirely, and they are actually much better, but they're also much more expensive. But the problem is, and if you go to the next graph, I'll show you that the same thing was happening when they looked at different storage models, where they had the same scenarios, and if we had different types of storage. And they found out that homes with PV and storage basically have little to no bill impact changes. And again, they found out that that because they're already pretty optimizing the electricity, there's really no more savings they can get, and that customers with PV and PV storage shows substantially fewer operations for opportunities for bill reduction, meaning they've already gone as low as they can and they can't go anymore. And this is the future that California is on, when it even understands, even in their own rate modeling done by sympathetic environmentalists, it doesn't make sense. That's why I called it Wacky Mountain High. And believe me, they're always a little afraid when I'm sitting in the audience because they know I'm going to ask a question that probably shouldn't be asked, like, why in the world are we doing this? There's no answer. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, or Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back with even more fun stuff.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, or Katherine Johnson, your host. Today I am talking about some really wacky and puzzling findings that I found discussed with my colleagues at a conference in Denver 2 weeks ago. The other one that I found, one of the other sessions I sat in on, and I was randomly just looking at sessions for people that had interesting ideas. They actually talked about how they made the case that electric vehicles are cost effective for utility in Indiana. Now, I just want to start by saying, when you do cost benefit models, you have to do all kinds of assumptions. And assumptions are where the sausage is made, and assumptions are also sometimes they're based on real facts, and sometimes they're based on opinion. But you can assume anything and then come out with a result that makes it look good, which is exactly what this guy did. And I have to say, I have an MBA and a doctorate in business. I think the entire amount of time I spent studying cost benefit analysis was probably 2 days. Now, I'm not an economist, took a lot of economics courses, but cost benefit analysis is probably the easiest math you can do. It's costs. Did the cost better than did the cost outweigh the benefits? It's a pretty simple equation. It's not at all complicated, much like the other equations I saw, like a regression equation with 18 inputs. That's complicated. Cost benefit analysis isn't. But you want to put up the first graph. So basically, this company was hired to sort of come up with an argument for that the Indiana Public Service Commission would accept, that says the utility can promote EV charging stations. And so they had to do their usual gymnastics with trying to understand how to evaluate or develop a program design that captures all the costs and benefits of EV charging stations. So what they did is, there's all kinds of problems. These are the inputs. I mean, there are pages of these inputs. I only put in one. But basically, there's a lot of problems with even trying to develop a cost benefit model because data aren't available. There's behavioral changes that they have to quantify. There's long-term effects they don't necessarily know about. There's all kinds of methodological differences. And the cost benefit analysis isn't always true. And there's attribution issues. Is that really causing this cost or that benefit or whatever? So there's a lot of going. So this particular study, you looked at all these inputs, and this is just one page of multiple inputs to come up with this cost benefit model that when you masterly pull it away and you get through all the math, it isn't hard. It basically said, oh yeah, EVs are cost effective for utilities in these kinds of certain circumstances, like light duty trucks and EV cars. And the commission should actually approve charging stations for EVs. But the problem was, guess what? They forgot to include some costs that would make the numbers not work. So they forgot to include the O&M maintenance costs, and they forgot to include the costs of the effects that EVs have on roads, destruction, they're very heavy, the fact that they need to have their tires replaced more frequently. Those minor little issues, which aren't minor at all, by the way, they kind of avoided. They didn't mention in their EV cost benefit analysis model, because guess what? If they'd included them, it wouldn't be cost effective. So I was like, wait a minute. So I challenged the guy, who's a friend of mine, politely, why in the world are you saying to the Indiana Public Service Commission that EVs are cost effective when they aren't? If you're not looking at all the other benefits or all the other costs, they love to look at the societal benefits, and they have all these wacky ideas about how we can quantify how good it feels to drive an EV. I mean, they're really getting into some pretty odd non-energy benefit quantifications around the country. But to not include the costs of a real thing like operations and maintenance, or the fact that EVs destroy tires faster than normal cars. And the guy said, well, I found a number that talked about tire maintenance, and I used it. But yeah, you're right. We fudged the numbers. He admitted this to me. And I'm like, you're supposed to be representing an impartial analysis of a case for a utility before the Public Service Commission, but you want to manipulate the numbers so it makes it look good. What does that sound like? Gee, awful lot like climate change data. If you don't get the facts you want, you just manipulate it. And I know this is a trick that statisticians have used for centuries, and I know it's sort of a problem with a lot of different studies. But in my little world, I always was naive enough to think that people were actually going to tell the truth and not fudge the facts, especially before a public service commission. It's unfathomable to me. But this also highlights another problem, that all these companies, all these utilities are promoting EV charging stations, and they're trying to get people to actually change the time of day, like a time of use rate. They're trying to get them to charge at night and in the middle of the night rather than during the day. There are problems with that too, because what happens is, same thing as other demand response programs where they kill your air conditioner for a few hours and then they turn it back on. There's a snapback effect. The minute they can charge it cheaply again, they go wush, and everybody charges their car and EV. And guess what? It costs electricity outages, and it also causes problems on the grid when you all of a sudden have all these cars that are charging at 2 a.m. coming online. And so the grid can't handle it. I found another interesting study that said that waiting for millions of EVs to be plugged in basically isn't going to be a good idea. And they also are finding that the grid problems can emerge at relatively low levels of EV adoption. In certain neighborhoods, upscale neighborhoods, they can have problems with everybody having an EV and they all charge in the middle of the night, and that causes grid issues. Well, guess why? Now here's the real dirty secret. Guess why utilities are pushing for EVs? It's because if you put an EV charger in, it defers the reason for having to upgrade your grid. You can actually the utilities are actually making more money by not having to upgrade their grid by putting in EV chargers than they're paying the customers for EV charging. So it's a way for them to reduce their capital outlay. It's a way for the utilities to make money, but not really solve the inherent problem of our grid's old, it's overrun, and it is really scary that this is another mechanism for the utilities basically to figure out a way to make money under the guise of beneficial electrification and grid charging, when in the end they're really just not. They're gouging the customers. And this happens in California a lot. And so the problem is that by having these EV chargers in certain neighborhoods, it also creates what they call a clustering effect that makes local areas even more vulnerable to outages. So the bottom line is EVs aren't cost effective from a cost benefit analysis, and that there's never going to be enough grid capacity to support them. This is a tipping point. So, the economists can fudge all they want and admit that they're not including everything to make it look good for a regulatory commission, but that is not the way things should be done. So I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching Dr. KJ, the KJ show with me, Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk. Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
And welcome back. We can take that graph away. Welcome back to the KJ Show. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on my new YouTube channel. And today, this is the part of the show where I used to be able to have a call-in segment, and we're still going to work that out, I swear. Or I'm just going to call John and have him call me directly and we can talk on the phone. But basically, I had something. Now, we're in the middle of the second longest shutdown, government shutdown in history, and I really couldn't resist. But apparently the Democrats wrote a memo realizing, and they called it, is it something I said? Was it something I said? And they're basically thinking that the language they are using is one of the central problems we face with normie voters. Now, normie voters, I guess, are folks like me, normal voters. I didn't think that that was a bad thing. How would they define normal? Okay, well, that's interesting. Signaling that we are out of touch with how they live, think, and talk. Well, yeah, I guess if that makes me a normie voter, sure. But what is that? Normal voters are what? The great flyover states? I don't know. This is still, even in the memo, they're dismissive of people that don't necessarily agree with everything. But they're figuring out now, and I don't know if it's gone all the way up to the powers that be, but this think tank came out, a leftist think tank circulated a memo telling the Democrats to stop using woke buzzwords and to get ahead of it in the 2026 primary. The memo was written by Third Way and said, was it something I said that targets the language embraced by the left and Democratic Party, including terms that I didn't even know existed, or terms that have become not kind of derogatory, like privilege, birthing person, cisgender, patriarchy, and LGBTQIA+. Now, having a child that fits into one of those categories, I don't necessarily like the fact they lumped autism in with all these other things, because I don't think that's fair. And it just shows that they're just trying to, say everybody's special. Well, of course, everyone's special. In total, the memo singled out the 45 words that the think tank noted that they say creates a wall between us and everyday people of all races, religions, and ethnicities. Yeah, the folks who didn't go to Harvard and Yale and the Antioch left-leaning colleges and learn all these terms and in freshman English, and then wonder why they're losing the vote. Third Way admitted that people simply do not say, yet they hear them from the Democrats. According to Politico reported on this, and according to Third Way, Democrats have alienated many in a desperate bid to please the few, particularly on culture issues where language sounds superior, haughty, and arrogant. And that is exactly how it comes across. And I have friends on that part of the spectrum who are often haughty and arrogant when they're talking about indigenous peoples and we care so much about you, but it's a very condescending way. The Third Way also said, Matt Bennett, the executive, said the memo as his organization's best efforts to get the Democrats to talk like normal people and not like they're leading a seminar from some liberal college like Antioch. The memo was written targets languages long embraced by the left, and it singled out 45 words that, according to people, the think tank, create a wall. So I put up, I think I have a chart of the 45 words. Here they are. Look at these words. They're insanity. I mean, and when people were talking, when I read this, I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. Cultural appropriation, body shaming, microaggression. I don't even know what that is. I mean, I think I know what it is. Holding space, triggering, dialoguing, dead naming. Dead naming is naming someone if they were born male and they transitioned to female, then you still call them their male name. Apparently that's bad, even though that's their legal name until it's changed. Existential threat. Oh, we've heard about that. How many existential threats have we faced in America since, who knows when? And there's involuntary confinement. I guess that we call jail. Incarcerated people, prisoners, allyship. BIPOC. Now, BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, Peoples of Color, and that is actually a really big term for study I'm using right now in the West, South and Pacific West, and they're really interested in getting people from BIPOC communities. And my thought was, why don't we just try and enroll customers in programs that make sense and help them save energy and reduce their costs and make the environment better, rather than critically saying we have to target these people because they're in this community. Yes, they're in underserved communities, but that's the utilities problem. That's not a societal problem. It's that they didn't build the way they designed their system. So we should be targeting all low income people, no matter where they live or how they identify and what color they are, what religion they are. It's just by creating these divisions, we're creating divisions by creating these weird definitions, and by saying it's the antithesis. I think it's the antithesis of what Martin Luther King Jr. said. We should be judging on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. So anytime we label somebody as a member of a particular group, we're automatically saying they're different. And didn't Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement, by the way, the Republicans, try to say segregation is bad? Segregating people by color is bad. Well, that's exactly what they're doing again. Harvard had the graduations where they were segregated. The blacks are on one side and the whites are on the other. And it's like, wait. We are taking a giant step backward in the name of unity and prosperity and democratic. I don't understand it. So I just thought it was really funny that the Democrat, some think tank out there, a leftist think tank, thinks that the Democrats need to change their vocabulary. I don't think it takes a think tank to say that. If they looked at the last election, they could figure out that a normie voter would probably like to see Donald Trump slinging fries and driving a garbage truck, and more relatable than other people talking about, well, I don't know, Venn diagrams and electric school buses. So the point I guess I'm saying is that this was just too funny and I had to share it. And now I have some pretty fun comments from John, who lives out in California, and he was talking about electrification being very expensive, and it is. And I've pointed this out many times in many commission areas, and I've talked to the folks that are behind the goal for electrification. In fact, I brought it up at the conference. I said, why are we making poor people spend more money because electricity is 4 times as expensive as natural gas? And one of my clients, a very thoughtful young woman, said, that's a really good question. Why aren't we asking that question? I said, I don't know, because these people have these socialist ideas, even though they don't know they're socialist, but they have these ideas that somehow they know best, and that, well, we know better than they do. No, you don't. And it's very arrogant to think you do. And that gets back to the whole mindset of these liberals that think, and these leftists, extremists, who think that all of a sudden we're better than they are. So we're not. I think no one is better than anyone. I think that's part of the whole reason of doing this, is to sort of say, we the people, all the people, not just some people who fit in certain categories. So, and John was also talking about how, the woke pendulum is swinging hopefully back into common sense land. We'll see. But I just wanted to talk about that for a second. But I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson. You're watching the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality? But it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating. Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
And welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ. I'm Katherine Johnson, your host on my new YouTube channel. And today I'm talking about some really wacky ideas I heard from my colleagues in a conference in Denver. This is the third really wacky idea. And this is something that I've been dealing with for a long time. So one of the things that utilities have to do, because they're regulated, electric and gas utilities have to provide programs for low income customers. They also have to abide by some special rules that they can't cut them off when they don't pay their bill during certain periods, where cutting them off in the winter, they might die, or in the summer, they might die, depending on their season. So there's been a lot of different types of programs set up to help customers who are low income or moderate income who get a discount. Like, they can't pay their full bill, so can't we give them a discount? And that's been a program that's been running in California and other places for a long time. This particular utility program is offered by all the main IOUs in California, investor-owned utilities. And they're basically saying there's a program out there. If you meet a certain threshold of income, 0 to 200% of poverty level, which in California is pretty high, actually. And it's also a very complicated formula, not only how much household income you have, but how many people live in the home. But if you meet these thresholds, then you can voluntarily sign up for a discount and receive a discount of 20% or thereabouts on your electric bill. Well, that sounds like a really good idea. And the problem is nobody's signing up for these programs. The other thing is there's two different programs in California, and they offer different types of benefits, but they sort of say, well, we're not going to actually verify your income through documentation. We're going to do a very small percentage of you have to actually prove your household income through your taxes or your unemployment or whatever. But 95% of you can enroll on the honor system in California. So 95% of the people who enroll in this program don't have to verify their income in any given year, which, as one of my more leftist friends pointed out, that's just bad business, because you're not getting people to, you're wasting money. So somebody asked in the middle of this lecture, how much money is California given to spent on this low income program that has no actual meaningful verification other than self-verification? This is $6 billion over the last 5 years. What? So basically, people who find out about the program can sign up, and then they actually get to have additional programs that they're eligible for as well. And even though this program isn't well known, the people who know it know how to basically game the system. So they actually also found out that despite the utilities' massive advertising budgets, they still have a really low awareness rate. Because guess what they discovered? There are a very narrow band of customers in California, about 2 million, that actually qualify for this program based on the income levels. And they're a very low awareness because, frankly, the marketing isn't going where these folks are. So even though they're spending a lot of money marketing this program and promoting this program and getting people to try and sign up for this program, they're not meeting their enrollment rates. Meanwhile, California Public Service Commission says, oh, by the way, Utilities Commission needs to increase the enrollment of these programs that nobody is currently enrolling. In fact, the paper was called "We Built It and They Didn't Come." So what the problem is that there's approximately $1.3 billion in subsidies that serves 4.5 million customers. And then there's another issue that there's just not awareness. And there's the program structural issue is they basically don't know. The income eligibility criteria is confusing. So people don't know if they're qualified because there's no easy way to say, there's my income, they just haven't made it easy. So, and the income criteria for the programs are not the same. So long story short, they have a program in California that is supposed to help low-income customers reduce their energy bill by signing up. It's free to sign up. It's a discount, and people aren't coming to it and aren't enrolling in it, even though California wants to increase the enrollments because it's not well designed or well managed, or frankly not well advertised. Now, the person giving this seminar, this lecture, actually admitted that when she was a grad student, she qualified for this program and used it. And even when your income changes over the year, they don't ask you to verify your income every year. And a lot of low income people may be only low income for a year, like a grad student, and then they graduate and they get a job and they're making actual more money than they were as a grad student. Yeah, but they don't have any mechanism in the place to verify this. So billions of dollars are being given away to customers who probably are no longer low income. They could have been low income at one point, but then they, raised themselves out of poverty, but they're still getting a discount rate. How is that fair to the rest of us and the ratepayers? And so as my little business hat was on, and my friend, and we were in the evaluation business. So our whole job is to make sure that programs like this get better verification. That's part of our word, evaluation, measurement, verification. We need to be sure that the people signing up for these programs are legitimately qualified or eligible. Apparently that doesn't happen in California for the four big utilities. Utility bills also are increasing. So you'd think that more people would want to sign up for the program, but they aren't because they don't know about it. And so the problem is that this was, they were supposed to get, they even passed another thing called the affordability project, which was supposed to give minor little rebates and cost savings to, $50 to help you reduce your electric bill. Well, electric bills are going up, skyrocketing. So apparently it doesn't really work. So here's what they wanted to do. They wanted to have a target of 30%. They came in, they had some of it was really good. And some of it is actually not so good, but it's really the FARA, this one of the programs, is obviously not reaching its goal. It had 60% enrollment goal, they had 25%. And this is why the commission is saying, oh, you got to do, so they're only getting a quarter of the eligible customers to sign up for a free program that helps them reduce their monthly electric bill. Free isn't a good idea. And the reason people don't enroll in these programs, in addition to language issues, is also that they think it's too good to be true. It's a similar problem that we have with weatherization programs, where the utilities will pay for customers to come, or for contractors to come in and fix whole homes and put in insulation and prepare, their siding, or prepare their caulking and improve their air sealing and make their houses more comfortable. But a lot of customers are like, well, that sounds too good to be true. So skepticism, especially among low-income groups, are pretty high. But I just thought it was amazing to me that these utility people are admitting at an evaluation, measurement, and verification conference that they don't have a very good verification mechanism. And I was the only one that asked about that. I wonder why. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
And welcome back to the KJ Show. I'm your host, Dr. Katherine Johnson. And today I always like to end my show with something fun. So another reason I didn't have a show in 2 weeks in a row was when I was in Denver 2 weeks ago. And then I was whisked away on a last-minute cruise to celebrate my birthday. And I went to Key West in Nassau, Bahamas. It was really fun. That was not it. There we are. So there's Key West. And I'd been to Key West a long time ago, but it was fun to go back. And basically, I found all these fun facts about Key West. It is the southernmost city in the contiguous United States, and it was first called Cayo-Husco. I'm sorry, I do not speak Spanish, but it basically meant Bone Island, where they picked up skeletal remains of the indigenous Indians. But then they misheard it, and so they renamed it Key West. Key West is also a haven for a lot of different writers, including Tennessee Williams. I didn't realize Tennessee Williams wrote plays there. You want to go to the next one. But Ernest Hemingway lived, and there's a museum, and in the museum are his cats. Now, Ernest Hemingway had cats that were very unique. They had 6 toes. I don't know if you can count the toes on these cats, but there's 6 of them. They're the original descendants of his first cat named Snow White, who also had 6 toes. They're very rare, and they have about 60 of the cats. I think it was in his will to have the cats live on and live in his house and be part of his world in this memorabilia. So that was really interesting. There's also, my favorite thing is the annual Key Lime Festival. I haven't gone. I'm trying to figure out to go, if I can go this year or next. But while we were in Key West, we did a key lime tasting. And I had a mini pie, and my husband had a pie on a stick covered in chocolate, key lime covered in chocolate. And then we had some really wonderful drinks modeled on a key lime with a graham cracker rim. It was amazing. But the key limes are so tart and special, and it's just a unique feature. It's one of my favorite things to do in Key West, just to go get some pie. They also do the next slide is basically, it is very close to Cuba, 90 miles to Cuba. It's actually closer to Havana, Cuba than it is to Miami, which is interesting. And in fact, the Cubans, when they do their marathon swimming, they end up in Key West. But the other thing that's really interesting is that they had they're called the Conch Republic, because in 1982, they were mad at the government and they decided to secede for about, 20 minutes or so, due to the issues with the border control checkpoint. So they basically said, we're leaving, we're seceding from the United States, we're the Conch Republic. And it basically is now a week-long celebration of the Conch Republic. So if you have a chance to go there, please do and enjoy it and get some pie. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You've been watching me on the KJ Show with Dr. KJ on my new YouTube channel. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.
This has been The KJ Show. Tune in next week as Katherine shares her insights to current changes in the energy industry while drawing on her experience as an energy efficiency consultant for the past 30 years, right here on The KJ Show.